Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by welcoming all of you to this very important interagency expert group meeting on the implementation of the third United Nations decade for the eradication of poverty that will end in the year 2027. And it is a great honor and pleasure for us to host such a distinguished group of experts from academia, think tanks, civil society, and the United Nations system. So from all of us, thank you for accepting this invitation. And I also want to thank my colleagues who behind the scenes have organized such a very, I'm sure, successful meeting. Now, as you know, fighting poverty everywhere and in all its forms is the overarching objective of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and one of the main areas of work of the Division for Inclusive Social Development that I have the privilege of being the director. So also on behalf of DESA, I would like to extend my appreciation to all the focal points of the third United Nations decade for the eradication of poverty from the UN system, because each year we reached out to you and your prospective entities seeking updates on progress, gaps and challenges made by, while implementing the system-wide plan of action for the third UN decade for the eradication of poverty. And I am pleased to report to you that member states continue to welcome and appreciate the timely updates you provide them through the annual report of the Secretary General on the third poverty decade. So, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has made it more challenging to implement the 2030 Agenda, as we know, and it is hitting developing countries especially hard, particularly African countries, the least developed countries, and the small island developing states. Since the pandemic began, slightly more than about a year ago, over 100 million people have been infected and more than 3 million have lost their lives. And we have also experienced the worst recession in the 90 years that has pushed more than 120 million people into extreme poverty, while the equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs have been lost. So based on the analysis of past crises, the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on health and education, women, children, youth, persons with disabilities, and groups in vulnerable situations may last years, even decades beyond the crisis. And the crisis is far than over. Moreover, we also have, to achieve the targets of poverty eradication everywhere, even before the pandemic. And now we find ourselves in a critical situation. So this dire situation calls for extraordinary efforts from all stakeholders, as well as supportive social and economic policy responses, including adequate social protection systems and measures. And it is therefore our way through this meeting to find ways to leverage the third UN decade on the eradication of poverty and its system-wide plan of action. We have to get back on track and support countries implement policies that invest in people, improve living standards, combat inequalities, and protect the planet. So to address these myriad challenges, the General Assembly and its 75th session requested the Secretary General to submit to its 76th session a report on the gaps, challenges, and progress made in the implementation of the decade, including COVID-19 related aspects, effects, and response. So our task over the next 4 days is hence to examine the gaps, challenges, and progress made in the implementation of the third decade, including the implementation of the UN system-wide plan of action for the third UN decade for the eradication of poverty. And we are here to learn what is working and what not within and across countries to guide our actions to accelerate progress. And we are so fortunate to have the benefit of the experience and expertise of such a diverse and prominent group for this meeting. I'm really confident that with a collective expertise gathered at this meeting, we will be able to provide our insights and key recommendations that will help member states in their deliberations during the 76th session of the General Assembly. And I wish you a very fruitful and productive meeting. And again, thanks also to my colleagues who have made this a successful meeting, I'm sure. Thank you.